So hi everyone, welcome to tonight. Thank you so much for coming. We have an added twist to tonight's presentation in that we're actually doing a live webinar right now. I believe that what the folks at home can see is what is actually on the screen. I don't think there's actually a video of us, so we can all make faces if we want to. But we are trying this tonight. We're going to get some feedback on how this goes. We are going to put the recorded version onto our website so people can view that at a later time, just in case tonight isn't an opportune time for them to tune in. And I would like to thank you all for coming. And I guess we're lucky that we're not in Atlanta and don't have to brave the icy streets. So thank you for coming out tonight and welcome. As you know, I'm going to try this little clicker. The board sets aside some time every year to come out and talk to our community. And this is it. This is the state of the school. And we want to give you guys some feedback on what we've been doing and kind of bring you up to speed, give you an overview of this year and a peek into next year. And we will do that tonight with myself and Eric giving a welcome and overview. We will do a brief financial update and a look into next year's tuition. Our treasurer, Debbie, is going to take us through that. Then we're going to spend some time talking about our strategic plan and each of the 4 components and give you an update. We're in year 3 of our strategic plan this year. And we'll take Q&A at the end. Now, for those of you who have dialed into the webinar, please feel free to type in your questions to the, I think there's a questions section. We will not be taking questions from the folks on the webinar until the very end, until the Q&A. But if you guys here in the audience do have some pertinent questions as we go along, you can feel free to chime in and we will take those. So with that, I always start this talk out with a little bit of talk about the Board of Trustees. If you've been here for a while, or if you came to the first presentation for curriculum night, did I say that right? Is it back to school night? Curriculum night. Then you may have heard this before, but the board is, there we are, there's our picture, some of us. The board is comprised of 21 trustees and 1 honorary trustee, and I am very excited that our honorary trustee, Jack Cowan, is here tonight to hear an update of our school. And we do have some board members present tonight. Orly McKinstry is here. Corinne Dugouville is here. Laura Mousseau, along with Claudia Mitchell. Tim May's walking across the back. Let's see, who else do we have? Debbie Newell, our treasurer. Heather Rock. Eric, of course, is a member of our board, as am I. And I didn't introduce myself. I think I know most of you here, but my name is Susan Greasy, and I have the honor of chairing the board for the 2nd year now, this year. Our board is broken up into several committees. And before I go to that, too, I just want to point out we do have a faculty representative, Cecile Casanova, and Corinne Dugouville represents the PPC, and as such, she is a part of our board as well. We are broken up into committees and task forces. Our Committee on Trustees is our committee chaired by Laura Mousseau. This committee is responsible for our governance, so it is responsible for our bylaws and reviewing those. If we feel that it's important to make changes that, they would present that to the board. And it's also a committee for board education. Engagement and philanthropy, Heather and Orly co-chair that this year. I'm certain that you all know quite a bit about this committee through the outstanding work that they've done with the annual fund, a lot of input as well to the gala every year. But this committee really tries to reach out to our community, find out different ways to connect and to stay connected throughout the tenure, not only at FASPS, but beyond. Every board has a finance committee. We're very pleased to have Debbie, our treasurer, chair the finance committee. It's pretty much a nuts and bolts finance committee. We meet every month. We review the finances, and recently we've been talking quite a bit about and developing an investment policy for the school. Insights and Dashboard, Claudia. Thank you for chairing this committee, Claudia. Insights and Dashboard is really came out of the strategic plan that we are in right now. We wanted a way to be able to get a pulse of what was happening from our community, parents, faculty, also what's happening in the external community as well, our vicinity. And additionally, we wanted to be able to create a dashboard and some metrics that the board could work with and monitor on a probably not a monthly basis, but probably a biannual basis. So this committee has been very active in helping us set that up for the past couple years. I'm sure you're all aware of the PPC because I assume most of you in this room are members of the PPC, but it's our parent-professor committee. And this committee just really does a fantastic job of engaging our community, communicating with our community, and working and making sure that everyone feels a part of the FASPS family. We have an offshoot of that this year, a task force that is looking at the structure of the PPC. This committee was put into place in its current form, I want to say in 2007, and our school has grown a bit. I'm going to show you a chart in a second that shows you how much we have grown. And we want to take a look and determine is what we have working, and is it the right size, is it the right format for where we are right now. And so we've had several meetings, and we're going to be making some recommendations actually at the upcoming PPC meeting to talk with the PPC folks about potentially making some changes there. And lastly, we have a very fun committee, the real estate committee, and I'm going to wait for a second and talk about real estate and FASPS 2030 in just a few minutes. So I don't know who in the audience is new to the school, but just for memory joggers, I wanted to give you a brief kind of overview of the past 19 years. So we are in our 19th year of operation. We started in 1995 with 13 students and 2 teachers. In 2004, we were very, very excited to move to this facility. In 2007, we had 276 students, and it was our first year to get, at the time it was PNAS accreditation. Actually, that organization that accredits independent schools in the area has changed their name as of July 1st of this year. It's the Northwest Association of Independent Schools, so NWAIS. In 2011, we started our current strategic plan that we're in. We're at 382 students, and I'm incredibly happy to report a couple of things. Number one, we've topped 400 students for the first time in our history, and we did that in January of this year, and that's a phenomenal feat coming from 13 students 19 years ago. 62 of those kids are in middle school. So we have a real thriving middle school right now, which only started, let's see, we're in our fifth year. We have 280 families. We've had an incredible response in our community fundraising efforts, in the annual fund, in the gala, and in the time that people have put into the school, over 4,000 hours of volunteering. We have 74 teachers and staff. We're growing, and as of October 31st, we are now proud landowners for the first time in history. Just a quick review on the strategic plan. This strategic plan was all about becoming more mature as an organization and strengthening our foundation. And I'm very pleased to talk through the next point, which I think we didn't expect it to happen so soon, but it did, and we were ready. So I'm thrilled to talk about it. So we own land now. We own 2.21 acres. In this slide, you can see our current buildings right here. That's East Mercer Way, coming down the side. So here's our four pods, actually, which are the turf is in the background. And we have purchased 3 plots of land right here. They were sold as a unit, and it's roughly 2.1 acres. And in addition to that, we have a right of first refusal to purchase an additional property that's next door, should that owner decide to vacate her property. So I don't know how many of you actually know where it is, but I wanted to put this slide up there so you can get an idea of the aerial view. This purchase, although it did seem to come about very quickly, it actually took us a year to look at it. We were first informed about this in the fall of last year. A parent came to us and said, you know, I know that we lease the land that we're on, and I know that, you know, the board has always been looking for a permanent home for the school. And she goes, do you know there's this property that's sitting right over here? And she came to Eric and I and discussed this, and we said, no, we don't know about this property. We pursued the lead and found out that it was actually under contract to American Classic. It's actually a contractor here on Mercer Island. However, we had talked to the real estate agents, and so they knew us. In the spring, we found out that contract fell through, and we were approached and kept in communication with the real estate agents, and we began to do some evaluating of the property. We engaged with Cartettle, who is not only our legal firm that we correspond with, but also all the other independent schools within the Northwest region use them. They offer their services to us at a discount for all the independent schools, which is nice. We were very lucky to get a fantastic real estate attorney to help us. And we also engaged the property of Alliance Management. And actually, full disclosure, Alliance Management is the company that is owned by the parent who had notified us about the land. Her name is Liz, and she had known about this land because she works with the Mercer Island School District, and Mercer Island School District was actually looking at this land when they had floated their bond measure 2 years ago. That bond actually fell through, and so the purchase fell through. But we had interviewed quite a few people to talk about this. I think 3. We looked at several references for Liz, and the bottom line came down to the fact she knew that land more than anyone else that we had talked to, and her references were low, and so we did engage her services, and she's still helping us out today. And we're thrilled that we're able to work with a community member to do this. We took several board meetings to look at this property, and we had an architect work on some potential drawings, one of which was we just wanted to see, you know, would this building right here fit over there? And yes, it would. You know, what other types of buildings would fit on there? And we looked at a lot of drawings, and in May, we decided that we wanted to make an offer on the property, and we did. We began due diligence, and that continued throughout the summer. We made a decision in August to go ahead and take possession of the land, and it took about 60 days for us to close, and we became landowners in October. So it's a great story, and I'm so thrilled that this came about, and that we had done, through previous board members and current board members, we had done the necessary steps, or taken the necessary steps, so that we were in a position to take advantage of this. When we talked about this in the fall, many of you may have been in that presentation, and the number one question that came out of it was, what are we going to do with the land? And at the time, and now, I tell you all that you know, we want to approach this in a very thoughtful way. And so the board has put together a committee called Fast Towards 2030, and there's a couple of reasons why we have that. We are almost in our year of 20th year, right? So we're almost celebrating our 20th anniversary. We want to look forward several years, maybe to when we're 30, maybe to when we're older. And also, the year 2030 corresponds nicely with when the lease is up on this property, which is 2029. So we wanted to have a real goal of setting a vision for where we want the school to be. So we put together a new committee to look at all kinds of recommendations on what we can do as a school and what different types of growth opportunities are out there and what we want to look into. The committee is comprised of about 16 members of the community. We have trustees, we have faculty, staff, parents as well. And we really look at this as a thoughtful exercise. So we're going to take the time this year and next year to really evaluate the options that are out there with a vision of what do we want to be in 20 years. The committee is going to use a variety of data to look at this. We want to look externally, we want to look internally. We've, as a board, have looked at things like this before, so we have some previous committee work that's been done. And we also want to get community input as well. And we'll be taking all those things into consideration and making recommendations and including the board along the way. And what we hope in the next 2 years is to come out of this with a good structure for our next strategic plan, which will be 2016 to 2021, and that this will be a good, solid foundation on which to build that plan. There is also another committee that we started this year that I alluded to earlier, the Real Estate Committee. That committee is looking at short-term. How do we utilize this asset that we now own? Are there things that we can do, as far as short-term use that will not preclude us from doing what we want to do in the long term? So we've got two kinds of separate looks on this, what we want to do short-term and then a committee that's planning for the long term. And just two quick notes on this. If we'd not purchased the land, we would still be doing this work, this FAST for 2030 work. But what we now view as an output of that committee is kind of the end goal of what we will do with that land. So that will be an output of the process. So I've talked a lot at you. I'm going to turn it over to Debbie, who's going to give us a quick update on our finances this year and a peek into next year, and then we'll get into the strategic plan. You want this?
Sure.
It's forward there. If you want it. We do have a Q&A at the end, but if you have something pertinent to where we are right now, I'm happy to.
I'm curious about the land. I've just a couple questions. One is, can you talk a little bit about the financing on the land?
Sure.
Two is, are you engaged with the city on things like traffic flow?
Yes.
Things like that?
Yes. I can answer two real quick, and I'm going to let Debbie answer one because I think it has to do with some of the things she's going to talk about in a second. Liz's company does work with the city because they work with the Mercer Island School District. She knows everyone there. We've had several pre-discussions and actually pre-applications with potential uses for the land. We've talked to the fire chief. We've talked to all the permitting options, the conditional use permitting when we need to do that. We've talked about traffic flow, and we've had a traffic study done. It was an update to the one that was done when we moved into this, actually when we put the second story on to this facility. We know there's going to be things that we need to do, but we want to kind of get a better sense of what will happen with that land before we potentially start paying a lot of fees for things like traffic studies and stuff, because we don't want to do that twice. No, the city's very happy that we've gotten the land and that we will be building a school there. Right. And just one more quick note about Liz. One of the things that was a benefit of using her, because of her work with Mercer Island School District, we were able to save tens of thousands of dollars because Mercer Island School District allowed us to use all the studies that they had done. To the extent that we didn't need updates, we were able to use those studies. And I want to say it was $60,000. Yeah, $60,000 to $80,000 that we didn't have to pay out of pocket because that work had already been done, and her relationship with them allowed her to ask them, and they were happy to let us use it.
I know that it's currently single-family residence. Is it zoned for multifamily residences? I see there's quite a few of those going up in the area here. I know it's commercial, office in the front here.
It is residential now. I know that the single, I believe, because the contractor who was going to buy it, the one that fell through, they had planned to put 8 lots there. And I believe they were going to have to go through another zoning exercise in order to do that.
And then the area around it, do we know about that?
The area on, well, can you go back to the, where do I point to? Oh, here we go. This is owned by the city, okay? These are single residence houses. This is the JCC, and these are the commercial properties that are, so this is the Globe building, this is where Mercer Island Pediatrics is right now, and this is the city, right? This is the police department. Does that answer your question, Paul? Okay. Anything else before we move on to Debbie? Take it away.
And then all the work that Susan was just referring to, the traffic studies and stuff, all of that was done over the summer during our due diligence process, which the board went through all of that and got input on all of that information before we were moved ahead with the actual purchase. So I'll just introduce myself because I don't think I know everybody in here. My name's Debbie Newell. I've been involved with the school for probably about 9 years. My kids attended the school right through 5th grade. They are now in Mercer Island High School. One's about to graduate and the other's a sophomore. So my kids have been here for a little while, but I've really enjoyed staying involved and been on the board for 5 or 6 years, I lose count, and treasurer for the last 4 years. And very much stay engaged with the school and enjoy that opportunity. It was such a fantastic experience for my kids and really set them up for a great education. So the opportunity to stay engaged and give back to the school has been a real privilege for me. So the treasurer is my job, so I get to talk to you about finances. This is just a really brief overview of where we are. I just like to start out with that, just a little bit of a look back as we closed out last year. We closed out last year with a reasonable surplus, more than we had originally anticipated having, which worked very much to our benefit. We used that surplus fund to supplement our facilities reserve. Now, when we started the current strategic plan that we are in, one of the operational things we wanted to achieve there was to start reserves. We, prior to that, really the school had no reserves at all. It was very important to us as a board to build those reserves so we had just operating reserves, so if we had a bad year we had something to fall back on, but also looking ahead, knowing that we were on lease land and that at some point we would want to purchase land or develop or do something to maintain the school on a longer term than the lease on this land would allow us. We knew we needed to put money away on that front, so at that point we also set up what we call the facilities reserve, and then annually we are allocating funds to both the operating reserve and the facilities reserve so we can continue to build that financial security for the school. The operating reserve, I'll talk a little bit about that. We determined that we wanted to have in reserves 25% of our annual operating fund, and we have achieved that a couple of years ago. So really on an annual basis, we just update that to maintain it at the 25%. The facilities reserve, since it's a little bit of an unknown what our future facility needs are going to be and what the cost associated to that would be, we're still working towards defining what the goal is for the end result of that reserve as far as the amount of funds in there. But what we have been very conscious about since we started this particular strategic plan is allocating funds to that reserve on an annual basis. So we had built up that reserve to a reasonable level by the end of last year. What we've also done is we allocate funds specifically. The board determines each year how much to allocate. We have a new family fee, which is when that was put in place, when we instigated that fee, it was intended and does feed right into our facilities reserve. So it has always been, from the board's perspective, funds that are funneled straight into that facilities reserve. In addition to that, what we have done the last couple of years, where we have ended the year with any sort of a surplus, we have also assigned that and moved that across into the facilities reserve. What that allowed us to do was actually take advantage of this land opportunity when that came up. A couple of years ago, if this had come up, we would really have not been in a position to do that. So to speak to your question about the financing of the land, the way we have done that, we have used our facilities reserve. We actually, because of the funds we had invested through the reserves, had access to a line of credit with the investment banker that we use. So in order to move quickly with the close on the property, we actually used a line of credit against our investments for a large portion of those funds. We have subsequently paid that down using our facilities reserve because we didn't see the need to maintain a line of credit. We wanted to keep our debt, manage our debt appropriately. So we've paid that down using our facilities reserve. So we've taken all the money we put aside into the reserve and put that towards the purchase of this land. In addition to that, we have taken out a loan with our existing bank, just our everyday bank. So we have a commercial loan with them for $600,000 at, what is that rate? 3.5%. And that is a loan that we've taken out. Our intention is actually to try and pay that down as well. We anticipate, obviously looking forward, there will be costs associated with whatever we determine we're going to develop on that land. So our plan in the finance committee and to work with the board at this point is to look at how do we start to put funds away and how do we break up the funding of the development. So some of that will be, as we continue over the next 2 years to put money into the facilities reserve, we now make that a standard part of our budgeting process. So that facilities reserve will be there. We do anticipate making a loan, probably we'll obviously look around, but our existing banker has been very good at getting loans for us. And we would do it probably the same way we have dealt with the loans on the current the buildings here. So we would look at that as possible, and then fundraising would be the third sort of arm of how we fund future development. That's your question about how we finance the current.
Yeah, I'm curious what the numbers are.
So the facilities, I can give you some of those numbers. The loan with our commercial bank that we still have and we'll just pay down was $600,000. The facilities reserve that we've been able to use was $1.4 million. I'm looking at Ken here. Just
the facilities were right at 1.4.
Right at 1.4, right? So the line of credit still has a $900,000, not in the line of credit, but in the total, in the line of credit, right? Does that add up? Did we get all the components of what we used to purchase? And then we had to use some sort of operating dollars as well to put down the down payment, was operating dollars.
So it's about $2 million.
2.8 the purchase. 2.8 was the purchase price. Sorry, yeah. Could have started with that one. Yeah, that was the purchase price. And then there's other costs obviously associated to that, and with the prudent management of last year's operating budget, we were able to cover most of those other costs through operating dollars. We didn't need to take out additional ones of the other costs and expenses associated with the purchase. So that was last year. So the surplus from last year contributed to our ability to support that. But having those funds, the invested funds in place, really made us the negotiations with to get the line of credit and the negotiations with our bank very straightforward. Looking at this year, 2013-14, we are on track with our budget. It looks like we will come through this year also slightly ahead of plan, not substantially. But again, the budget cycle for us, we set our preliminary budget right at the beginning so we've just set the preliminary budget for next year. So when we set the preliminary budget for this current year that we are in, we were still not thinking about buying land. So the management of this year's operating budget, again, it's been exceptionally well managed by the business office, such that we are able to deal with a lot of the costs that we are seeing associated to the land purchase through our operating budget. And we're very carefully monitoring that to ensure that we can continue to do that. So we don't anticipate having a huge surplus because we are using a lot of those funds this year. So let's talk a little bit about the preliminary budget for next year. So like I say, we've set that. It's a preliminary budget. We always revisit our budget come September when we actually know enrollment numbers for the year, and we understand the full faculty costs and all of those items for the year we revisit. But we need to set the budget at this point in order to proceed with plans for next year. The approach we take, we look at the expense side of the school. We get input from Eric and his team on the anticipated enrollment for next year, and we've agreed to be very conservative with that number. We're not anticipating any growth in the enrollment for next year when we set the budget, partly because we're almost full, so there's not really a lot of room for growth. So until we decide what our growth plan is, we're sort of budgeting at a pretty consistent enrollment number. So we look at that enrollment, and from there we look at what is that going to mean from an operating cost, from a allocations of funds to reserves, and build our budget, our expense budget on that. Once we've determined that expense budget, what it's going to cost us to run the school, from there we can then determine what the tuition needs to be in order to support that. So those are the numbers. I can go through those if you guys wish. As you can see on the expense side, the largest portion of our expenses is salaries and benefits by a substantial part. If you add into the salaries and benefits the instructional cost, which is the cost associated to the actual educational experience for the kids, and the financial aid, those things are the large majority of the expenses. It's all about the educating the kids, right? That's where the large majority of our expenses are. There's a small amount of fundraising. The board designated funds, this number here, the $391,000, that is the money that the board designated into reserves. So that's what those funds are about. On the revenue side, we are always have been about tuition. Our revenue is almost all tuition. There's been a real effort on the part of Eric and his team to build the additional revenues, what we're calling here extended day miscellaneous. That little portion of the chart has grown substantially since last year. And I know there's very definite effort to continue to look at other ways to bring in revenue. So there's the Orange School that uses the facility on the weekend, and so there are various ways we look at that. And we'll continue to look at those opportunities, because it's always great to see how to take a little less of the burden of the expenses from tuition, if there are other ways we can supplement the revenue side of the picture. The gala, annual fun and bread sales are obviously a critical components to complete the picture as well. We're always looking at how we can work with Anne and her team to support those efforts and the funds that come in there. And again, that is a critical component. We look to see what we can do to build those funds as we go along. Any questions on those? The total, so our total expense is 8.6 and total revenue is 8.7. It's about 9 or 10% increase year over year from last year on those two numbers. That's about the increase there. Any other notes? So given that, from that building of that preliminary budget is what allows us to then come up with determine what tuition we have to charge in order to meet that budget. And what we've tried very hard to do is to be consistent in our tuition increases. The school has a very varied history in tuition increases. We've been up and down and up and down. And what, as a board, we have committed to try to do, and the finance committee works very hard on this, is to try and be more consistent in what we're doing. So when we plan our budget, we don't just look at the year, we look 5 years ahead, and we look at what is it going to require us to do as we look forward. So we've tried to do that. We managed to bring it down a little bit from last year, the percentage increase. So what we're looking at is a 4.6% increase for the lower school. And then we've maintained the $3,000 difference between the lower school and the middle school, which is something we've consistently done for several years now. Not quite since the beginning of the middle school, but for several years we fairly quickly determined that was an approach we wanted to take. So that makes the middle school increase a little less from a percentage point of view. Down to the fees, the new family fee is calculated based off the tuition, so that will change, obviously changes as the tuition changes, and then there's no change to Gallery in the homework help fees this year. Any questions on that? But we really do hope, as we come back to you in each year, that we're going to be able to show you a similar percentage increase rather than having real peaks and valleys. And this, I think we were 5.5% this year, 4.6% this, 5.5% coming into this year, 4.6% for next year, and that's sort of the range we would like to stay within. Yeah.
How much was allocated for financial aid, and how do you decide how much you want to allocate for financial aid?
Let's just repeat the question for the webinar people.
Okay, cool. Yes. So the question was, how much do we allocate for financial aid, and how do we decide how much we're going to allocate to financial aid? So financial aid here, $734,000 is what is allocated for next year. There are various components of financial aid. There is the financial aid to the families. There is tuition remission to faculty and staff, and then there is the French course that some of the French families are eligible for. All of those. Doesn't really kind of, it is financial aid in that supports those families coming in, but it's not something that we budget to. Our goal is to say 10% we want to make available as financial aid. That is our goal. And we've generally set that amount, put that amount aside for financial aid, and I have never been involved in a year where we haven't had sufficient money budgeted. We have always been able to meet the demand. Right? So we put that 10% aside, and up to this point, that has met the demand that we've had. So we feel that's a good number. We do look at that very closely every year, and we monitor how much of that allocated funds is being used and is being allocated to those who need it. And we keep a very close eye on that because we want to be sure that that is something that is meeting the need.
And it is common in independent schools to be between 8 to 12%.
Yeah.
I was just curious how that was determined. It's just one of the things.
Yeah. No, we've had that 10% approach for some time, and it's consistently been effective. We look at the burst too, and that generally is on top of the 10%, isn't it? So that's additional. It makes a difference to us, not because it's money that we have to find, but if families are not getting that, then we probably do have to find money to support them. So I know Eric works very hard to ensure that anybody who's eligible for that is applying for that, so that those funds can come into to support them, and we don't have to provide the financial aid for those people. Yes.
So if I understand the numbers right, you're talking about next year, you got 8.6 and 8.7, you $100,000, which goes to reserves. That's the reserve, the contribution to reserves is the balance.
It actually is, no, the reserves is different. So the board designated funds of 390 is what is going into reserves. The difference, it's actually about 70,000 difference between expense and revenue, is what we would call surplus. And we budget to have a small surplus because we don't want to budget right to zero.
So the reserve, contribution reserve is 390.
The next year, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, any other questions on that? Yeah.
Debt service and returning, what is that?
those
retirement,
pockets.
retirement goes into the employee benefits.
Oh, retiring debt. So the question was, just to repeat the question.
No,
Sorry.
not retirement.
Yeah.
As in employee retirement, retirement of obligations.
Oh, that's
So the-
part of facilities.
So the question was for people on the webinar was where in the expense chart are the payment of debt and retiring debt, the expenses associated to that, and that is part of the facilities chunk. Okay. So now I'm handing back to Eric.
Thank you very much, David. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight. So this is Eric speaking. So I hope you're having a good dinner. So I'm going to talk with you about the strategic plan update. So I'm very glad to report on the progress of the strategic plan. So as Suzanne said, so we started 3 years ago. So we kicked in the strategic plan 3 years ago. And we worked prior to that for a full year on defining what we would define as the priorities. And so we decided on 4 main priorities. And here's a R. Yes. So the first one, the first one is really about the program, about pedagogy. And if I had to tie it to one of our core values, I would say that it is about excellence, excellence for everyone, for all our students. So the second one is more about, it's quite self-explanatory. It's more about gaining more exposure. It is obviously about communication, and it's very important in such a diverse community like ours to make sure that we understand each other, and so that we also make you aware in details about our unique program. So the third one is about our community, one of our core values as well, and so and its involvement and the support. And it is always when we look at the results of the survey each spring, it is always something that comes back, and that we feel like our community is really one of our best assets. And finally, the fourth one, last but not least, we talked about it earlier. So it is really about integrity, and it's what we do now. It's through reporting to you, but also planning for the future, having a long-term vision, and also making sure that on a daily basis we make the right choices. So let's talk about the first one, the FASPS experience. And what we want for the school. So for the ones who have been here for several years, you keep hearing me talking about 3 main priorities: harmonization, differentiation, communication. So you see them all here. And in such a school, again, in a bilingual school, harmonization is the key. Because again, we want to optimize the teaching time in our classes, and making sure that we hit, the French standards and American standards. So that's why our teachers work on a regular basis. Every week, actually, you will see the French and American teacher of the same grade level working together, designing the progression. And it's an ongoing effort. It never ends, because programs evolve every day, and we have to adjust to them. And finding the best programs to hit those competencies. So the second one, differentiation, communication. And it is also something that is very important in our school for making sure that we address every student's needs. And so that's why very early in the year, we provide our students with assessments that really guide our teachers in order to customize their teaching towards our students. And so communication, again, that's something that, I don't know any school where you wouldn't hear, oh, we have a problem of communication. Because, not everyone communicates the same way, but at least what we want to make sure of is that since we are talking about what you have the most precious in life, which is your child, your children, we want to make sure that you and us, we are on the same page, and that we work as partners for the best benefit of your child. So that's why it's very important early in the year, as we've done this year again, like in October after all the assessments, making sure that we have the opportunity to meet, to talk about your child's sometimes challenges or support needs. So, that's why we really consider that the full constituents, parents, teachers, the administration, and students are really the square of success. So the third one, we kept adding this year more resources, and that's also go back to the differentiation. So we added more resources for math management in support as well. It can be about reading, writing, language acquisition is something that we will put the emphasis on this year. As you probably know, I'm sure many of you heard about this new position that we have this year. We hired a learning specialist. Her name is Alice. She started in November, and she, since then, she's done such a great work. She's seen tens of students and really crafted individualized plan for them. And she's not only a specialist in language acquisition, but she's also a specialist in math and logic. So she's doing a great job on that. So something new also that we implemented this year, a social emotional program. It's, again, very important because it's not only about academics. We want to make sure that our students thrive in our school and also in their life out of the school, that they feel confident, that they feel, what can I say, good in their body. And so that's something that we started this year, and so we chose a set of 10 values that our teachers are teaching throughout the year. And so we have several type of programs. So we have a pilot program that's called Roots of Empathy, and I'm sure that if we have a grade 2 parents here in the room, so you would know what I'm talking about. So many different projects that will make our students, improving their social and emotional skills. And the fourth bullet point here is about accreditation. It's very important for us to be recognized as a quality program, not only by the French Ministry of Education, because as I said earlier, we want to make sure that we hit the standards also of the Common Core standards in the US. And so I think that Susan said earlier that we were accredited for the first time in 2007. Back then we didn't have a middle school. So now that we have middle school, so we need to go through the process to make our middle school being accredited. And so I think it is a great opportunity for all of us, not only teachers, staff, and trustees, to think about who we are, but also for you, parents, to engage and to help us to reflect on what we've done, what we've achieved in the past, and also what we still have to work on. And so this is going to be a year-and-a-half process. So next slide, marketing and communication. So a lot of work has been done over the few past year on that. And I think that's, again, it goes to the same, to what I said earlier about communicating with you, hearing from you, because at the end of the day, that's also what will make us, improving, again, for the best of the interest of our students. So again, for the one who've been here for a little while, so you've had the opportunity to fill out the survey, the spring survey that we sent you. I think it was the second edition last year. And so this year we'll have also coming up a survey about the birth service and the hot lunch service. And I can tell you that our middle schoolers didn't wait for us to send the survey, because if you read the Friday Flash on Friday, obviously it's a Friday Flash, so you will see that they had I think that they had a poll about the difference between this year and last year about the food. So the new tagline signage. So that was also something very interesting that we were so excited about. So it's kind of pretty old now because it was implemented about the summer. And so if you don't know about it, I would be very sad because actually, and I won't be the only one because actually recently one of our right Puget teachers came to me very happy and she said, you know what? One of my students even was able to say what it is. I said, wow, that's great. So another thing that I wanted to mention, the bus. It is not only a great service for our community, but it is also a great marketing tool, and I'm sure that some of you have seen it in Seattle area. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but hopefully maybe at some point we'll be able to also have a bus service for the east side. So we are working on it, and so please respond to the survey because that will be very important for us. The land purchase, we talked about it earlier. So we're very pleased and to see that it was featured in several media locally and nationally. So the Advancement Office did a great job at having the news out. So this year, oh, what did I do? Okay. So, okay. So this year we implemented also new resources in the Advancement Office. So Michelle Stilby joined the team in December, and she's here, so thank you for being here. She's our external affairs associate, and so basically she's going to help us to get the word out and also to connect us with several networks. And so we have also an admissions assistant. So Ellen Shears joined the team as well at the beginning of the school year. And so I know that Professor is very pleased to have some help. She was asking for many years, so we made it happen. So, and finally, so I think it's very important also for you to realize, not only for you, but for our teachers to realize how our school is sought after. Because when we advertise positions in our school, I can tell you that there are many applicants, and actually, as you can see here, we even went above over 50 applications for one position in average, which is huge. So it says a lot. It says that that it's great to live in Seattle first, and also that for a teacher, when you look at our website, when you have the opportunity to come here and to see how we work in in such a great community and in good spirits, so that really says a lot, and I think it is important. And I'm sure also that after the game, on Sunday when the Seahawks will win the Super Bowl, we'll have even more interest. So, and I was talking about having your opinion and to hear from you, and so that's something that we committed also is to report back to you what was told to us, and so what we do is it. So I would start by saying that first of all we are very pleased to see that when we asked a question, so would you recommend our school to another family? So you can see that about 89% say yes, so which is very reassuring. We all know that word of mouth is so important, especially when we talk about education. So that's a great indicator for us. And so now let's talk about the curriculum and programs. So and I'm sure that you've seen that when you filled out the survey for the ones who were here last year. So we ask you how are you satisfied with some disciplines that we are here listed. And I think that it goes back to what I said earlier when I said that we really need to work on communication again and again, because sometimes it is a perception. Because when we put some data, some facts against those numbers, sometimes it doesn't match. And I'm glad to see this crowd today, and I wish we could have the same crowd when we have the test info night, because you will see that when we look at math, for example, our students are doing great. So and it doesn't transpire here. So anyway, I think it is a feedback, and it's very important for us to get it. So then we need to show you more what we do, how we do it. And if you look at some other percentages here, so and when you look at what I just talked about regarding our initiatives and actions, So you will see that, we take into consideration, obviously, what is being said to us. So, for example, this character development, social emotional development, so that's something that you didn't see, and so that's the reason why we emphasize that this year with the program that I just talked about earlier. And so, so the second point, same thing. It goes with this leadership development that was pretty low in your degree of satisfaction. Yes, Adrian?
Lower is worse, right?
Lower is worse, yeah. Because you have several columns. You have like consider being excellent, very good, good. I think it's average after that. So that says that 46% of the respondents consider science being either excellent or very good. So, so enhanced leadership activities projects. So we've implemented a lot of those this year. Like for example, grade 4 are in charge of emphasizing the green projects. So they are the ones who weigh our trash, and so they made a presentation in front of these 400 students. So that's quite something for a child this age. And so the grade 3 students were also on stage when we had this assembly at the JCC, and they talked about the social emotional skills. They decided to put a mailbox in the hallway to collect students' feelings, and it's working pretty well. I mean, the mail is almost full, so they have a lot to say and a lot to share. So. On the middle school side, we had a leadership club, in the morning, so that's new too. We had students-led assemblies as well on a regular basis. What else? Yeah, I need my glasses. So yes, we also organized some leadership and service retreat for grade 8 as well. So, yeah, I think that's. Oh, no, yes, the third point, so provide initial assessments and implement necessary differentiation. So I already talked to this point. Again, I can tell you that there is a lot going on. You can not imagine, and for the ones who come here sometimes to attend committees and who have the opportunity to come during school hours, so you can try to find a room available, and you will struggle, I can tell you, because we really optimize every single class, every single space. Teachers go from one class to the other class to be able to group the group into several groups. So there's a lot going on, but again, I really think that it comes down to being able to communicate to you in a proper way and in a good manner. Yes, Pascal?
Is this a survey that you or feedback that you do on a regular basis? So do you have trends, whether it's getting worse or better?
Yes, so the question was, is it a survey that we are doing on a regular basis, and so do we see some trends? So as I said, it is only the second edition, so it may be a little bit too, not enough to see some trends, but at least we see a trend about the science and math. And that's why, when I say that we need to communicate more on these ERB results, on this French test, to show that when you look at the facts, it's not magic.
So it's a good trend.
Excuse me?
It's a good trend.
Yes, yes, exactly. But we are not there yet. You know what I mean? I would like that the satisfaction percentage really reflects what is happening. So based on facts and on results.
Where would you like it to be?
Where I would like it to be? I mean, if it could be 110%, that'd be great. No, I think that's, again, if it is difficult to say, I am satisfied 100% when you don't have all the data in hand. Everybody's busy, and sometimes you give your feedback based on a feeling, a perception, on something that was told to you by another parent. So I know that it's impossible to have 100%, but at least what I would like to see is the same level of satisfaction, at least, that we have on the language. Because, we are not, how can I say, less effective in math and in science than we are in language. But what I would like us to go away from is really to be considered as a language school. I keep saying that to, even during open houses, we are not a language school. We are a school, a bilingual school, which uses languages as a tool to learn with high expectations in terms of not only academics, but also, as I said earlier, we want our students, our children to thrive, to be able to make wise decisions in the future, to be responsible adults in the global world. So, and that's, this very fundamental core value that I think that we can be proud of. It's this cultural activity. That is something that really distinguishes us from a lot of other schools. And one of my objectives this year, and so pretty soon we are going to attend the NAIS conference. And what I would like to see is if I can find assessments that would be able to, how can I say, reveal that. Because you can find tons of assessments in math, in science, more in math than in language, most of the time. That's the most important discipline, and the rest, there are very few. So I wish we could find assessments that would assess the level of, how can I say, comfort, the level of adaptability of our students. Because I can tell you that the feedback that we hear from our alumni is that they are so well prepared when it's time for them to transition to those big high schools that we are all scared of. So they are not only well prepared academically, but mentally, psychologically. And they report that back to us. So I wish we could find some assessments like that. And I'm going to work on that with my team. Any other questions? No. Thank you, Samuel. Let's turn it over to Heather now. Thank you.
So my name is Heather Brock, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Board and the Co-Chair of the Engagement and Philanthropy Committee with Orly McKinstry. And my husband, Paul, and I are also the parents of 3 kids here at FASPS, a 6th grader and 2 boys in kindergarten. And 4 years ago, I had the pleasure of being a parent who was asked to be in the group that helped to put together the strategic plan that we are now in the middle of. And it has just really been incredible to watch how much we have achieved since we put together that plan. And I know that a lot of schools, the strategic plan is something they do and they put it on a shelf and it doesn't really go anywhere. And I think our school has actually been incredible with sticking with the plan and really achieving a ton. So the goal of the Engagement and Philanthropy Committee, which was renamed from the Development Committee as a result of the strategic plan, the goal of that is a highly engaged community where all the constituents enhance the well-being and growth of the school through social, educational, organizational, and financial contributions according to their desired ability. And we have done a really great job again this year with the annual fund. So far we're at 89%. We really would like 100% participation from all the parents. So anyone listening who has not contributed, everything counts. Even a little tiny bit helps us with our participation. And Giving Week, and we had really 9 really nice and generous matching families that really helped a lot with the percentage of parents who gave during that week. The board, as a result of the strategic plan, has just approved a major gift plan, and that includes a number of different areas where if donors are willing and have the means where they can give additional money beyond the annual fund. And the one we would like to highlight, Eric just brought up, is our new Cultural Agility Fund, and that is going to be one of the 2 funding needs that we have at the gala this year. One of those at the gala is always the scholarship fund, and then we usually pick something different. And since we've just approved this major gift plan, We are highlighting the Cultural Agility Fund, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about what does cultural agility mean. Because I think a lot of parents came here, especially the ones who aren't French and didn't know what a great education France provides to their students. They came here looking for cultural agility. Their children to be able to be successful, in a world that was changing, and to be able to be multilingual. We also have a thriving alumni program that we started 2 years ago. We have a number of different alumni activities, and there is an alumni parent party and a very popular student movie night party scheduled again at the Seattle International Film Festival. I also want to highlight that our 20th anniversary celebration, we're going to be 20 years old in another year. And so that is going to be the calendar year that goes from January 1st of 2015 through that year. And we're going to have a really huge gala for that and a number of other ways to celebrate that year. And then the PPC, engagement is all about PPC. We're so happy that we have a really terrific PPC chair again, which this year it's Corinne. And the number of volunteers we have through the PPC and what they do for the school is just really incredible. So, any questions? Okay. I'm going to hand this to Susan.
Thank you, Heather. So Debbie, I'm Debbie right now. Debbie's son is appearing in a play tonight, so she had to leave. So I'm going to take over this part for her, which is okay because 4 years ago when we did the strategic plan, this was the part that I worked on. So we talked about the strategic plan being about becoming a more mature organization and building a foundation. A lot of that really lies at the heart of a clear financial strategy. And it's not that the school didn't have a financial strategy before, but we wanted to grow it and ensure that we were doing things that other 19 and 20-year-old schools do. One of the things that we've really been successful at the past, really this will be our third year, is looking at a longer-term view. So we do set tuition a year at a time, but when we do that now, we are looking with at least a 5-year view out. And that's been incredibly helpful in trying to, as Debbie mentioned earlier, trying to make consistent increases rather than wild swings, which is really what had happened in the past. And in addition, it gives us a sense of prioritization and really making trade-offs that is harder to do when you're just looking at a single year. So that piece has been implemented for a while, and it's working very well with us. And Debbie talked a lot about building up our reserves, and that really is what allowed us to take advantage of this opportunity when it came up. We had built a relationship with our bankers. We had we did talk to other bankers. We started an investment account, and all that allowed us to act quickly when the purchase presented itself to us. And not only did it allow for this purchase, but as I mentioned to you, we do have a right of first refusal on the adjacent property. Should that become available for sale, it will be presented to the board as an option, and we've prudently planned for that. Actually, in the next year budget, should it come up. We wanted to take a conservative approach. So not only were we seeing that happening from the past, but we're continuing that on in the future. While we were building up reserves, the school didn't have the ability to have a lot of money that was out there in the investments prior because we didn't have any. The building up the reserves focused us on really building up an investment policy. We had one prior, but we updated it quite substantially from where it was. And the Finance Committee has taken on the onus of managing that with an investment company that we partnered with, it's BNY Mellon. But we may look at in the future siphoning that off to a smaller committee or task force. The fourth piece here, Debbie talked about, this reserves that we're going to be contributing on a yearly basis. When we did the strategic plan 4 years ago, we put some numbers out there as to what we thought would be a good idea if we were to purchase land or need to purchase land by 2029. That was, done that year. The Finance Committee this year is going to take a thoughtful look at what do we want that to be ongoing. There has to be a healthy balance between what current parents are now paying for future facilities or future locations, what we would take on as debt, and what we would take on in the form of fundraising. And we really want to arrive at an answer of what is the amount of tuition each year that will be contributed to maintaining and perhaps procuring more or building more on facilities. So that's the number 4 item there. Last year was all about implementing a new salary and compensation structure for our teachers. That was approved by the board last year and implemented throughout a little bit of last year and into this year. And that has all now been fully implemented. That was a key component in the early part of our strategic plan. We really wanted to make sure that our faculty and staff were appropriately and well compensated for what they did. We wanted to be in the position that we're in right now, where we're having the applications for a position, and we're able to be very choosy about the people who come in and teach our most precious commodity here, which is our kids. So any questions on this piece?
The reserve that you're showing for the upcoming year, $390,000, does that fit with the reserve plan, or?
Are you talking about number 2 or number 4?
Number 4.
Okay, so the question is, does the $391 that's allocated in the upcoming year's budget, is that reflective of a conscious effort of an amount of tuition, right, that's allocated to reserves? No, because we have not gone through the process yet of actually deciding what that right number is to maintain the balance. So that number is still taken from the strategic plan that was done 4 years ago. It's a bit dated. I'm not saying it's not the right number. It may be, but we want to be very thoughtful and conscious about making that decision.
You need to do.
This, we've done number 1. We've kind of done number 2, but it's still an ongoing thing. Number 3 is also we've been working on, and it's still ongoing. Number 4 is something we need to do. And number 5 has been fully implemented. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else? We've taken an hour and 15 minutes of your time. Thank you so much for devoting your precious time to hearing what's on about the school. Yeah, I want to say thank you for coming. Upcoming events, and then we're going to get to our Q&A. We want to see all of you at the Gatsby Gala, March 15th. If you don't have it on your calendar, please make sure it's there. We want to continue celebrating. The board in December had a little celebratory toast for our land acquisition, and we want to do that with you as well. We're very pleased that we're in the position that we're in right now, and we thank you for all of your continued support to be able to put us there. We are going to be going through quite a bit of work this next 12 to 18 months. Really, is it 12 months, Teresa? For the NWAS accreditation. Not only is the faculty and staff doing a lot of work, the board is going to be doing a lot of work as well. And that's critical. We cannot, not that we would ever lose our accreditation. I don't foresee that happening, but it's very important. It's one of those things that it's critical and necessary. We don't want to take it lightly. And just say thank you for being part of our community and making the FASPS family what it is. So questions, and I'm going to take some from the room, and if there are any from the webinar. Oops, I'll take those too. So yes.
So we're pretty happy with the school. Really happy with Eric. What I want to know is, with the capacity that we have in the school, will there be a place for my third grade daughter to to attend middle school. It would be a physical place. We have capacity.
Will we have capacity?
By the time my third grade daughter gets to middle school.
Well, yeah, I think that the enrollment model that we have now will allow that to happen. But it is true that pretty soon we may find ourselves in a position where, you know, this attrition that happens, and that it's not only in our school. We can see that in all bilingual schools that require to have at least some French background when you are in kindergarten. But it is true that as time goes, we see that we have a better attention, which is a good sign. But at the same time, it is a problem because we need more space. So in theory, so we can go up to 425 students in this facility. We are very close. It is true, but you know, I think that again with this enrollment model, we can do that. We can continue having our students, you know, stay. Not all of them will stay because we know that sometimes, I mean, we have a student going and coming. That's a natural flow. But I would say that if we wanted to think about what's going to happen to FASPS, you know, 10 years from now, and that's what we are working on, you know, with this FASPS towards 2030 committee. So then we could think of many other things. You know, we can talk about IB, additional tracks in elementary. We can talk about high school. We can talk about a lot of things. And we know that if we talk about those options and if we consider those very seriously, and we do, so we know that this land will be used.
I don't want anyone in the room or on the phone to feel like if you're here right now that we will not have a place for you at some point in the future. No. We purchased land, and you know we have this. You are our most important kids and customers here. Yeah, I don't want you to have that fear.
No, 2.5 years out until my daughter hits 6th grade.
It's true. This building has a capacity of 425 kids, but we have another opportunity now, right?
And not only that,
there may not be there, but you know we will do whatever we can to retain our current students. That is that's a huge priority for us. Am I saying that wrong?
No, totally right. And I would say that to complete my answer, what we are doing now is to accept students coming in, and we are very happy to do so. But if we have some issues with space, obviously that is something that we would not be able to do. So, and we would start by that, obviously.
Okay.
But our current students,
that we can
yeah.
So sure.
Keep a nice tight form to the school.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Eric, there's a question that came in via webinar about music, about resources that are dedicated to music at school.
Okay, the question is from the webinar, and what resources are being dedicated to the music part of the curriculum?
Yeah. So since last year, so we hired Hélène Ferry-Hoffman. She's a cello player for the Seattle Symphony. And so she's been our music teacher. Last year she was teaching elementary from first grade through middle school. And so we changed it a little bit because there are some teachers who really want to be in charge of the music program. And that's fine. You know, we don't want to force them to have someone else in the classroom. And so what we've done though is that we said, Hélène is available to anyone from YPK through grade 8 for specific projects, and so that's what she does. She's in charge of many projects in many classrooms. At the middle school level, we have the formal music time, and so that's for music. But for art, for example, we have a very solid drama program that is done on a weekly basis, and that's something that is that doesn't happen in every school. And that's certainly one of our best assets too, because it gives also our students a level of confidence, to be on stage, to express themselves. And I wish we could fit all our parents in a room when we have the end of the year performance, where we have 3 plays being done by our middle schoolers. Really spectacular. So that's for drama. But you were talking about art in general, or it's just music? It's just music. Yeah. So and NN is not the only one to be considered as a resource. We have also other resources, like we have Davi, who is one of our monitors and he's a musician. So he has recorded a CD. I think it was with grade 2, and last year, and he will do that again this year. He worked with kindergartners last year. So we really want to tap onto all the resources we have. So, but there are some teachers again that really want to handle the program because they're just passionate about music, and that's fine with us.
Eddie?
Following up on that question, for the non-middle schoolers, is the music a formal part of the curriculum and just managed either by the teacher or by the external resources or additional resources? I mean, is it explicitly we have to have music in every grade?
So for the people on the webinar, the question is music a required part of the curriculum for those students who are not in middle school?
Totally, yes. That's totally part of our program. It is in the French curriculum, and that's we have some competencies that are supposed to be reached in music, in PE, in art in general. So it is fully part of the program. Yeah. So that's my point. When I say that if teachers really want to handle this part of the program, that is totally fine, because that's what they're supposed to do anyway. So here in our school, we have the luxury to be able to tap onto other resources, and that's great, because some that might not be as comfortable with music than others have the opportunity to have those resources available. And in some schools, sometimes we call it décloisonnement or échange de service. So it's if I have this talent as an elementary teacher, or being a musician, or being passionate about art, so I can take your students, and you will take mine for during the same time doing, I don't know, history, geography, and we do that also here at the school.
There's another question here. Yes.
Yes. It's interesting you mentioned some of the teachers really want to have their own music curriculum, and that you'd like to see that. And as a parent, I do like having the French and English curriculum matching up to reinforce each other. How are the teachers finding that, building the curriculum together? Are they receiving that well? Is that going down well?
The question for the webinar folks is, how are the teachers finding harmonizing the 2 programs, the French and English program, together?
So first of all, there is no option. It is not. I mean, we have to be clear. When I conduct some interviews with teachers, I said to them, "What do you think about teamwork? How do you work with team?" And I'm very blunt with that, because it is not only, and I would say it's not considered as something like very heavy for them. They really understand it, and they know that it is also for their best interest as teacher. Because otherwise, you feel very frustrated. I am an educator myself. I'm a teacher, and I know that, at the end of the year, you feel most of the time very frustrated, because even when you are alone in your class, and when you are your class for you only, it is tough to be able to nail down all the program. So imagine when you have to share your class with another teacher, and you have to go through, another program. Because there are some, I mean, again, math in French, math in English is not that different. There are some areas where it is true, it is different, because I always give this example because it is so obvious that here, for example, in the US, because of the system of unit, we use fractions earlier than we need in France. And that's why, that's something that we consider and we harmonize. That's what it's called harmonization. And our teachers meet every single week because, it makes total sense, and that's how do we optimize the teaching time.
But beyond the fact that it's not optional for them, are you finding that they do enjoy it, they champion it?
Oh yeah, definitely. And even, there are many teachers that even stay in the classroom when their peer is teaching. For example, the French teacher would remain in the classroom when the English teacher is teaching, and sometimes they even intervene, say, oh yeah, we talked about that earlier. And so it could be perceived sometimes as a co-teaching. So I really don't see that as a constraint. Everyone in the school, they see the point. It is not an option again. It is, we couldn't function without harmonization.
I have a question about safety. Things have happened in the past couple of years that keep popping up in schools. Is there something, a plan being put in place, or even finances to make the school safer? I don't go into detail, but I think what I'm talking about.
Right.
Just in general, I've kind of thought of that off and on, just walking into school. What could make the building physically safer? In other words, what is the board or the school doing in that respect? Is there something on those lines?
So for those of you on the phone, the question is about safety and what is the school and the board looking at as far as more options, it sounds like, to make this ensure security on the school.
Sure, yeah. So obviously safety is priority number one because, not only against any threat from the outside, but even within the school, it is an educational place, so which means that, yes, we'll have some interactions among the students, and sometimes, yeah, you will, as a parent, receive a behavior report, and so we will let you know that something happened, and there's some consequences. Now, if you talk about general security, general safety, making sure that this facility is safe, so it is, I'm sure that some of you have seen some changes, like, for example, in the morning, so we always have, staff at the doors, welcoming parents, and, you cannot enter in the building, obviously, without, ringing and being granted access to the school. And when it's obviously recess time, obviously everything is locked, and so I would say that it is a main concern all the time from us. But to be honest, I don't know what else we should do to become a more safe school. But we do a lot of drills, like, for example, lockdown drills. So that's something we do on a regular basis, and it's necessary. And our students are really well trained. Same thing for fire drills. We do them on a regular basis, like every month. So unless you have some specific examples.
I guess I'm just thinking without being too rapidly detailed, just, in general, how do you make the facility safer? Not requires, but I am talking about outside people, per se. That is a concern, just because you never know anymore where it's going to happen, but it seems to often happen in schools. It's just walking up to the door, how safe is the flash you've got in there, which is something as simple as that, without overreacting. I don't live in a military penitentiary, but I think that
Or do you just reevaluate regularly to make sure the procedures we have currently are still all appropriate?
Yeah, so that's, it's an ongoing thing. If we feel like sometimes there's some area where we should pay more attention, that is something that is brought to our attention from the faculty or from the staff, sometimes from the parents. If I hear parents saying, "Oh, I've seen someone loitering around school," and and would describe this person. So obviously, I would call the police. I would also share that with the JCC. Recently, for example, I had. I hope this person is not in your room. Someone smoking here in the parking lot, and that is something that we picked on. We are aware, we hear about it, and so I mean, smoking is not a crime. You know what I mean? But it's just to let you know that we have a lot of people watching and making sure that when something happens that doesn't follow doesn't follow the rules, that we are aware of it and that we act on it.
Do you do any, sorry on that question, do you do any sharing with other schools about approaches to security? Do you do any, have you hired any security consultants to come in and just provide some advice or information, that type of thing? Maybe that's what you're...
Yeah, that is, I hate to say it, but yeah, what used to be the standard and what is happening now seems like the standard isn't enough anymore. You almost need somebody come in and say, these are the weak points I see. I can be wrong.
So in December of last year or the year before, there were changes made. Eric brought this to the board's attention, and there were several different options that were looked at for additional security devices that could be implemented. Eric's team looked at those and basically did the ones that they felt were appropriate, as you mentioned, without turning, things into that, into a military zone. You don't want that, right? And so it was definitely looked at then, and I know that, even in the budgeting process when we go through, it's not a peanut butter spread in the budgeting process. It's a line-by-line, thoughtful approach to what else is out there that we need to do, not only in educational areas, but also even down down to security things. So it is looked at through that, and it was specifically looked at 2 years ago in December.
And I remember, for example, once we called Mercer Island Police Department, and we asked them to come and to give us a feedback on the security of our premises, and they did it. They even attended one of our lockdown, and we asked them to be in charge of it and to see how we were doing. And so that's the type of thing that we do.
If you haven't been in a meeting in the school with a lockdown drill is going on, it's a very interesting dynamic of what happens. It's happened to me a couple times. I've also been for several fire drills, which, we did that in elementary school, or at least I did. I've never been in a lockdown situation drill, and that was interesting. Another webinar question? The question is, how much do we spend per student on tuition expenditures? So that is an interesting question. When we look at comparisons to schools, we typically look at a couple of things. Number one, where does our tuition sit relative to theirs? And secondarily, how do we compensate our faculty and staff in comparison to how do they compensate their faculty and staff? And we have...
And also how much goes to the classroom?
Yes, sorry. And there's always a percentage of the budget that is being spent specifically on educational expense. So really those three measures. For tuition, we have traditionally been on the low end of tuition. When you compare us to schools in this area, other independent schools, we are below 50%.
25th percentile.
25th percentile of what's out there. We traditionally spend roughly, is it 80%, 80 to 90%? It's like, that's kind of the band of how much of your budget that you spend on educational expenses, and that I think includes the financial aid. And we've been right in the middle of that. And then within teacher compensation, we identified 4 years ago that we were not in a favorable position, and that was why the first 2 years of our strategic plan were specifically to address teacher compensation. I have to be honest with you, we have not looked at a metric of dollars per student on educational expense. But given that we fall fairly favorably in the other areas, my guess is that we would be right on par on that, but it is something that I will make a note of and we will take a peek at.
And it is difficult, you know, to say what the average is, because obviously we don't spend the same amount of money for a grade 8 student than we do for grade 1. Even within the grade 1, sometimes it's not the same, because they don't necessarily have exactly the same project. They don't necessarily use exactly the same material. So, I mean, it would be just a bulk parts.
The other thing that's hard when you're talking about comparisons is, you know, we're a school of 404 students. You know, we're 19 years old. We don't have the grounds or the facilities or the athletic departments of other schools. You know, we have a different approach. So sometimes those comparisons, as Mark mentioned, are a little hard to make, but I think it's interesting to take a point and look at that as well. Yes?
I would like to say on that. First, I'd like to sort of take the opportunity to commend the board and you and Eric on what appears to be just a wonderfully managed program.
Thank you.
Really every year it's been impressive, and every year it's a case study in how to grow a school really well and very professional in a thoughtful way.
Thank you.
So I really mean that. Now that I said that,
That was the bread, now comes the meat, right?
if I do the math right, our first child is here 6 years, and if I do the math right, we've seen a tuition increase of 40% since the first child started, and that gives one pause. That was
of course.
Unseen. We wouldn't have expected that 6 years ago, and that gives one pause. And when you look at the financing, you look at the new property, you look at the investments in order to build there, and so on and so forth. I do have some trepidation about what compound interest brings us over the next few years.
Of course. And so for people on the webinar, the question is, tuition has steadily risen over the past, well, in this person's experience, 6 years, but to be honest, it's risen ever since we were incorporated in 1995, I would assume. And that is something that independent schools are looking at heavily in general. It's not only us that has this problem. Education is a resource-heavy, a human resource-heavy component of expenditures. And in my perspective, it will be interesting to see how technology may or may not change that component. You know, one thing that has been very, very important to the Finance Committee is that we try to have some consistency in tuition increases. We don't want the wild swings that we've had in the past because we believe that leaves people unprepared. And I think it shows, you know, that potentially we haven't looked out as far as we need to. And that's why we're taking the five-year view. But you're right. You know, when you have let's just call it, let's say it's 5%, when you have a 5% tuition increase every year, that grows over time. And it becomes difficult when, specifically in the past 5 years, real wages haven't done the same thing. So I can say this with certainty. You know, this will be something we will talk about again at the National Association of Independent Schools Educational Conference that's coming up in February. No one has found the tidbit, the holy grail, yet to how to attack this problem specifically in light of the fact that real wages haven't grown much in the past 5 years. My own hypothesis is that technology is going to help us in this light at some point. But I also believe that you're never going to replace a one-to-one relationship that you have in a classroom, with a human and a student. So it will be interesting to see. But at this point, I can say that we have tried very hard to follow guidelines of CPI plus about 2%, which is where we're trending with which is where other schools are trending. But I hear you. It's hard to look back and see the increases year over year.
And I think that it is, again, it's not only about our school, and every school is asking the same question to themselves. And so I'm going to attend this coming week, actually, a conference with the French American schools, and we are going to talk about sustainability. And so I think that what we started to do, and we need to continue doing so, is to diversify as much as we can our sources of revenue. And we talked about source of revenue. Like as we said earlier, now we open our school on Saturday mornings to a Dutch school, Saturday Dutch school, and so it provides us with some revenue. It's not huge, but it is a good start, And we have, as I said, we have the bus, we have the hot lunch program, we have the CNED program, the distance learning program for our alumni. So all of this, together generate some revenue that will help us also to minimize the tuition increases. So we need to continue to inquire in this direction, actually.
So we want we want tuition increases to be as low as possible, but we do not want to go back to where we didn't have any reserves, where we weren't able to be nimble, and react. We have to look forward and ensure that the school is here for our children's children and their children. That is, as a fiduciary of the school, that is, key.
I totally accept that. And again, I say that the growth, I think, has been very, very well managed. We just have to bear in mind that there are people that join the school.
Oh, yeah.
And the school is a very sort of different profile and circumstances, and the growth is being funded by somebody.
Mm-hmm. Another webinar?
More of a
Comment?
question. Thank you to Eric Systems Messenger for providing leadership in this exciting time of growth and opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you also to our IT director for making the webinar.
So that comment was thank you to Eric and the board, and also thank you to the IT director for making the webinar possible. Yes? So, oh my gosh, can I just tell you that, so my son is in the 2nd grade. So for the people on the webinar, the question was, will the social emotional program be available to other grades? And then someone added, and parents. I have to tell you, my husband wanted to send an email to Eric to say, that program that you have for the 2nd graders, is it available for the moms of the 2nd graders too? So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric to answer the question.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, so sure. I mean, it has to be available to everyone. It's like we talked about music earlier. Same thing. It is a school-wide program. That's not something that we would give the teachers the choice, because it is very important for all our students. So we all agreed on that. Before the beginning of the school year, we had a week of reflection, and so we decided to give the priority to 4 main axes for our school improvement project, and this was one. And so we agreed on these 10 values. Everybody understood that they had to go through them, and it was their choice to address them. So we were not very, can I say, directed, but they know what they are supposed to do in terms of competencies. And so that's why, some teachers were very excited, very eager to start a program. And if you haven't heard about it, I really encourage you to look it up online. It's very interesting. It's about developing empathy skills, in our students through seeing, how can I say, a baby and his mom or his dad interacting, because it is quite disturbing, you know, as you are all parents here. So when you have a baby and it's crying, and what does he want, you know? And so and it is very interesting for the students to be in the parent's shoe and try to guess, you know, that the person that I have in front of me may interpret my words differently than I expected. And so it is such a powerful tool for a child, you know, at the 3-year-old or even 12-year-old, or even for us. So, and that's just one example, but we have, as I don't think that I mentioned that, but we have in our staff a monitor that is also a psychologist, and so she coordinates some program about you know, social and emotional skills. So she would explain, she would go to the classroom, she would organize some activities with the students. So you will hear more and more about that. So, but again, it's not necessarily something that you will see some worksheet about the program. That's really happening locally.
In each grade right now, or they just roll it out mostly in a few grades and then just kind of
In each grade.
in each grade?
Each grade, every teacher is aware that they need to go through these 10 values, which are generosity, friendship, it can be empathy. You know, it's a set of 10 values that they have to go through. Yeah.
Is there any progress in any of those 10 areas?
If we've seen some progress, for sure. For the students?
Yes. Any progress by the students or the second grade moms?
Sure. But you know, it is, yes, we see some progress, and just to go back again to this Roots of Empathy program, obviously I was very curious to see it in live. And so I could see and I could hear even the students themselves saying, oh wow, the baby's not crying today. And then the instructor just asked, so why? Do you have an idea about why the baby is not crying today? And so one of them said, maybe because we are quieter. and maybe because we are less active around the baby. And so, you know, it makes them think about their behavior. And so that's just a simple example. But when you give the opportunity to students to lead an assembly, for example, it is way different than just having the head of school, the assistant head of school, or the teachers in front and trying to make the assembly quiet, because then, you know, you're in position, and so you gain some respect, you know, by being in a situation. So, and this is happening. So, but again, it's not an overnight thing. It is an ongoing effort, and I'm very confident that obviously we will evaluate the progress that we are making, not only at the end of the school year, but we are doing that on a regular basis. And we will adjust, we will change things, we will maybe stop some programs and start new. But I think it is very important for you know, everyone to think, oh wow, it's also much more than just academics. Yes, yes, true. Yes, yeah.
I was thinking there was a question on sources of revenue, and I heard the emotion program for parents. You mentioned, I heard you say the word ID in high school, and I was just wondering what's the horizon on that? I mean, are there concrete plans, or is it just for now part of this time?
There is no concrete plan. Except that we know that there are some high schools in other French-American schools that are very different. So we know that our network of schools is very creative. So because we need to respond to our community, to the market also, because that's something that right now we don't have anything in hand. As far as is there a market for a high school? What we know is just, yes, we have at least one person. So what we know so far is just what we collected as information through the survey, because we asked the question. Again, for the ones who answered the survey last year, it was there. So we have some data, but again, it is too limited because it was kind of let's dream big. And so would you be willing to have a high school? So sure enough, we have a lot of people interested. Now we need to talk about capital campaign, we need to talk about which program, we need to talk about all these things. And so that's what the FASPS Towards 2030 committee will be in charge of.
So for the next 2 years, we'll be looking at what other options are there for growth for the school. And we hope to come out of that committee with a solid recommendation and a timeline for what that next growth option will be.
But it is not something that we consider lightly, because if you read our strategic plan, it is there. You know, it's black on white. It's written that we are going through an high school feasibility study. So, and it makes sense. So, and you know, tomorrow I will have an interview with a consultant that will help us to get data about, you know, is there a market or not, and for what kind of educational program. So we're going to spend the right time to do it right. So, but again, you know, it makes sense.
Yes. I think you, I mean, clearly for those people that have been here for longer than we have, even kids in school, we don't, when I hear that, it makes me realize, knowing that probably from the moment you make a decision that says, yes, it makes sense to go to high school here, to the moment it actually happens, it'll probably take a number of years. And as a result of that, I look at the horizon, the time of decision, and I think those are the other years that I actually add on top of making the high school happen once the decision has been made. I look at that and I say, I have to go somewhere else for high school.
You know,
It may not be the reality of everyone. I'm keenly aware of that. I'm fairly certain that anybody above 4th or 5th grade has reached that conclusion. If we're talking about a decision that will take 2 years and then another probably a couple of years before the high school is built.
You know, I think that you're right. In theory, yes, when we make a plan, you know, and you say, okay, so that's where we are going, and you go backward, and you say, here we are. You know, you need maybe 1 year for a feasibility study for the capital campaign, then you may need 2 years to raise the fund, and so 3 years at least, right? And how many years it will take us to get this conclusion that we need to make the feasibility study for the capital campaign? So that's what you are saying. But again, I mean, there are opportunities. Think about this land. I mean, 3 years ago, nobody would have bet a dollar that we would be in a position that we could buy this land. I'm talking about $3 million. Obviously, a high school will certainly cost a lot of money. But I think that, aren't we in the US, everything is possible, right? So, I want really to reassure you by saying that it's not a question of expertise at all. We know that, you know, the baccalaureate is such a known and recognized diploma, and we know how to get there. If we know how to deal with a middle school, we'll know how to deal with a high school. Then, and again, it is really a question of opportunity. We may have like a bon Samaritan, you know, coming to us and say, forget about your feasibility study. I have 10 million. I know I'm doing big. And that's funny because that was an exercise that we had at the board level. So maybe it's going to make it count. So, but I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic that, you know, once we have the data, the board, you know, once they have the data in hands, will support whatever is the you know, the best decision to make for our school. So, yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take, but we are working on it. Yes, Laura?
In light of increasing tuition, what do you as a school do to ensure socioeconomic diversity?
So how do we ensure socioeconomic diversity given that tuition is rising? And Debbie talked about our financial aid, and every year we look at that. We look at what tuition is recommended, and we see if we need to increase that that particular pot of money. As Debbie mentioned before, in her tenure as treasurer and with the board, we've been in a very fortunate position that we've been able to have adequate funds to be able to satisfy the financial needs that are assessed. There is an assessment that goes on. You know, for those families who have come to fill out an application and have a need. We look at it every single year, and it is something that we talk about every single year, because what makes the school is the community, the diversity that we have in ethnicities and nationalities and languages spoken. You don't just find that everywhere, not even in other French American schools, as we have found through some survey work that we have done. We are very diverse. We are very proud of that diversity, and we want to maintain that. And we look at that very carefully every year.
So if you look at the percentage of recipients, financial aid recipients, we have 25% of our students to receive, to some extent, some financial aid. So it goes from as low as 5% of the tuition up to 90%. And for the French bourse, it's even better than that, because the French bourse can go from 0% to 100%. So it's the whole spectrum. So again, I think that we spend a lot of time on that, because it is such a priority for the school. And so tomorrow we are going to send the enrollment letter. And again, we put that in there and saying, please, you know, if you feel that it is such a stretch for you financially, don't hesitate to come to us. We really want to hear from you. We really want to see, you know, how we can help you. So, and we do that for our existing families, for current families, but also for incoming families, obviously. So I think that we are in a good position. As we said, so far we always had enough money to satisfy those applications that are based, obviously, on you know, the level of their revenue.
I think we've lost the webinar, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm glad that we had it for as long as we had. Are there any other questions in the room? Yes.
Yeah, the site of the new building, is it potentially close to the school as well?
That land can be used for a number of different things. And when we were going through the evaluations, we looked at all kinds of different buildings on there. I think we had one with as many as 40 classrooms. So, you know, depending upon how high we went, if we went to a third story, if we put it in the basement, or if we put it on top. So there is a lot of opportunity that land will afford us.
What about parking?
That's, you know, we just...
Remember I talked about the short-term real estate options? That's something we're looking at. You know, it all depends upon the cost and the, you know, to convert it compared to what we're paying right now, because we do pay for some off-site parking, and how long that payback is going to be. But it is something we're thinking about and looking at.
Any other questions? No? So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And thank you for coming today.